What's up, guys? It's me again, Christian Rodriguez, and today I'm going to talk about um, what to do when someone feels off. Right? You meet someone, maybe you meet them at an event, maybe you meet them in school, right? Maybe you meet them at work, wherever it is. Maybe at the gym you meet them, right? And this is you just met this person, but for some reason they give you like a weird feeling. You feel a little weird about them, right? And I always recommend to create distance from this, but I want to get more in depth with this because I think people know this, right, in theory, but most people tend to ignore it. Most people tend to, they overlook this stuff. Then maybe they'll be like, oh, so and so told me this person was good, right? So I'm going to believe them, right? But I want you to like have a different way of thinking of this, right? So I'm going to start with my first point, right? And that's successful men, right? They curate their circles, right? And like I've observed successful men in history. Like I've read biographies, and the common denominator that I learned from successful people is that they constantly curate who's around them, right? They curate their circles. They curate who works for them, right? So they're on top of they're very selective on who's around them, like employees, assistants, clients, business partners, friends, right? And even women, even though I could probably argue with that because if you look at even Jeff Bezos, his wife divorced him and took half of his wealth, so maybe not exactly, but still, they're generally selective on who's around them. And the thing is, I bring this up because success leaves clues, man. If they're doing it, I don't think if they're very selective on who's around them, I don't think that's a bad playbook to take, right? Because then you're not as available for most people, right? And you're able to protect yourself from just bullshit. Awesome. And I wanted to talk about Dan Martell, right? He's a successful entrepreneur. He has a big YouTube channel. I love his stuff. I watch his content. It's very informative. Yeah, I'm giving him a shout out, but yeah, no, he's a great guy, at least based on his channel that I know him, but I follow him on his Instagram as well. And there's something I noticed, right? He actually had a little reel that resonated with me. And he was talking about if someone feels off to me, but I can't explain why, I'll keep distance and never do business with them, right? Obviously, he said something similar to that. I don't remember exactly, like word for word, but basically, he was saying that he's not going to sit down and wait for someone to screw him over so he can confirm it. He's just going to keep them away and they get no access to him. So he's talking about if someone feels off, but he doesn't know why they feel off, he doesn't have a reason to cut them off. That's his reason to cut them off, basically, right? And it resonated with me because you just have to be able to sit down with it. You have to be able to understand. Okay, he has a good point, right? Because if someone feels off, that's your subconscious telling you something. He also talks about energy vampires, right? And you want to avoid them like the plague, which is going to get to my next point, right? And my next point is the 48 Laws of Power, Robert Greene. Emotional states are contagious, right? In the 48 Laws of Power, Law 10, avoid the unhappy and unlucky. I always reference this book, but this book is super fucking important to understand, to know, to read, to study, because it talks about real stuff. And that's the thing. Emotional states are contagious. You will drown from trying to save a drowning man, right? So if someone's drowning and they don't want help, they're just going to make you drown with them, right? And if someone feels off, right? I don't think you should just sit down and like Dan Martell said, you shouldn't just sit down and just wait for something to happen, right? And that brings me to my experience, right? Because I've always every fallout that I've had in the past, right? Maybe with old friends, maybe with colleagues at work. Actually, I didn't really last at a job too long to have like a toxic fallout with people, but I hear stories of it. But every time every time I had like a maybe like I was in a frat, so like I was around people, so I would sense this as well. But every time I sensed something off with someone early on, right, and I kept them around, there always was either some sort of drama, there was some sort of toxic dynamic, there was some sort of betrayal, right? And the thing is, I ignored these signs, right? And I created this because I don't want you guys to be naive like I was, right? Don't be naive like me. Because if you're naive, you're going to be bitten by a snake. And that snake will come out of the grass to bite you, right? The snake, so I have this analogy, right? The snake may move stealthily and hide in the grass effectively, but if you don't see the snake coming, you risk getting bitten by it. So just think about that. And even so, a very big reason why I decided I came up with this idea a couple of weeks back. Right, there was a networking event in Chicago. It was awesome. It was it was a great event. I've been attending networking events mainly so I can get clients for my business, my own business. But also I kill two birds with one stone. So I go to meet clients and I also go to meet people since I'm new to Chicago, but I also want to surround myself with more, like like-minded people, like entrepreneurs, right? So I killed two birds with one stone with it, right? And it's been really helping with the isolation part. And it's great to just connect with people, right? But I noticed something, right? I was at the event. I met this guy. Remember I had seen him like before at another place I was at, and he was there with his girlfriend, right? His girlfriend was actually pretty attractive. I'll be honest. And the guy, he was like, "Oh, like we know each other, right? Like I met you before." It was like, "I have no." He was like, "Have I seen you before?" And I was like, "Yeah, we were. You saw me at so and so place, right?" And he was like, "Oh yeah, I remember you. Yeah, 100%." And we were talking, and I don't know. There was some sort of like weird vibe I was getting from him, and it was almost like he was asking like inappropriate questions, right? Like he was almost like trying to act like he was trying to bring his status up type of questions, right? It was like little questions like that, and it was like questions like showing off like how fun his life is. And this guy's older than me. This guy wasn't like young, right? This guy was definitely like maybe late 30s, maybe 40s, right? He could have been in like his 40s, but this guy wasn't that. He wasn't younger than me. He was definitely older than me. He was very I don't know. I just sense very like insecure energy from him, right? And it was weird. Like I was being polite, I was being nice, whatever it was. But after that exchange, I felt weird. I was like, this guy's an entrepreneur. This guy is, at least the way I see it, this guy seems like he's doing well, right? He has a hot girlfriend. He must be doing something right. But there's something off with him. There's something very sketchy about that guy, right? Like I don't trust that guy. And that's the thing. Like he just rubbed me off the wrong way. But the thing is, right? People are gonna say you're being over dramatic, Christian. You're being wrong. Uh, don't just stop being overly paranoid. And maybe you're right. Maybe I am being overly paranoid, right? But say if I decided to keep this guy around, right? Say I ran into him later in the future, right? And I have business success, right? And maybe we end up like connecting, right? I end up keeping him as a friend, or I make him a business partner, right? And say something goes wrong. Maybe there's a betrayal. Maybe I find out something. I find something fucked up that happened, right? Or there's a toxic fallout, right? I will look back to that day, right? Because I know these patterns. I've seen this movie before. So you really have to like you cannot ignore that feeling. I'm seriously gonna tell you, do not ignore that feeling. Because I definitely have, and I was right. My subconscious is always right. All right, and so the next point, right, is you need to be ruthless, right, with your access, right? Not everyone's gonna agree with me because I always say, yeah, you have to be ruthless. You have to be ruthless with your time. You have to be ruthless with who's around you, right? And people are gonna be like, "Oh, you're being too rigid. Uh you're being too cutthroat." But if you're not, the thing is, if you're not, right? People will, if you let people, they'll ruin your life for you, right? So this is why I say that. So if you sense that someone's off, right, with your gut feeling, you sense something's off, you don't want to keep them around. You don't want to do business with them. You don't want to make them your girlfriend, your wife. If you're a woman watching this, you don't want to make them. You don't want to make it your boyfriend, right? You don't want to make this person your boyfriend, your husband. You just don't want to deal with this person because this person could fuck everything up for you. And that's the thing. You need to be able to size people up. You need to be able to spot what's the right person around you, who has green flags, who has red flags, right? Who's the right person to be around you, right? And that's the thing. I go by these questions, right? So there's 3 questions that I would ask myself for to sizing people up, right? Obviously, it's probably going to come up with more questions as the channel grows. What are their behaviors? Like what's their behavior? Are they, say it's your longtime really good friend, right? And he has a girlfriend. He's about to move in with her. He loves her, and you find out he just cheated on his girlfriend, right? Now, can you really trust someone that's very sneaky and they sneak behind his girlfriend's back, even though he loves her and stuff like that, and he plans on making her his wife and the mother of his children, right? He sneaks around. Can you trust that guy if he's sneaking around cheating on his girlfriend? What makes you think that if he's willing to do that to a woman he loves, what makes you think that you're safe? You're 100% not safe, right? This person might be able to. He probably has already done like sly shit behind your back, and you don't even know about it. But you got to look at these behaviors, right? You got to look at. I remember I once had a friend who he had another friend. Now the other friend wasn't really my friend, but it was his friend, and that other friend had a girlfriend. They had broken up, and the guy I was friends with, took that girl out on a date like the week after his friend broke up with that girl. And I just found that, especially like right after the breakup, I found that kind of weird. I found that kind of sneaky, and I ignored it, right? And of course I ended up getting betrayed years later, but that's just an example of it, right? Of behaviors, right? So like really get good at watching people's behaviors, right? Do they show insecurity? That's the next question, right? And the thing is, I know everyone has insecurities, but does someone's insecurity, like you could like really tell that someone's like very insecure about something? Like the guy I mentioned at the networking event, right? Who's like trying to show off, or he's like trying to act like he's superior. There's usually some sort of insecurity behind people's behaviors, right? When someone tries to act a certain way, right? They try to act like they're superior. It usually comes from some sort of insecurity, right? And the thing is, there's different insecurities come in different shapes and sizes. There's different types of insecurities, but it's something that's very hard to mention in just one video. It's probably something I have to get more in depth with. But insecurities are very once you spot it, you won't be able to unsee it, right? You're going to be like, okay, this person's a little off, right? So you got to get very good at that. And then the next question, right, is how do they act under stress or inconvenience? This is a very big one, right? How do they act under stress or inconvenience? Are they, if there's traffic, do they get angry? Do they start screaming? Or do they look and they're like, oh, that sucks, but do they stay like composed? Maybe they're agitated, right? I'm not going to say that you can't be agitated. Maybe they feel agitation, but they say, oh, I should have left earlier. They take accountability in their actions. Maybe they ask themselves, "Oh, maybe I should have done this. Maybe I should have left earlier. I should have gone to bed earlier. Whatever it was, I should have gone to bed sooner." That's a sign of accountability. That's actually a green flag. That's a person that you could probably can trust, you can do business with, right? That's someone that you can that's someone that that's someone that you want to keep around, right? But then the other person on the contrary, right? They they feel stress and they just start they panic almost and they become a spaz. They respond with their emotions, right? Because I once had a friend who was a nice guy, right? He was very nice. For like the first 2 years I knew him, he was such a nice guy. We were cool. I was like, man, there's nothing wrong with this guy. I was wrong because when there was stress, right? Whenever there was a stress or inconvenience, he would turn into an asshole, and that's a sign right there. Does this person become an asshole when there's stress involved? Because that's the real them, right? According to the laws of human nature, right? Robert Greene talks about how everyone wears masks. It's a normal human behavior. It's a human trait. Um, I'm very different, right? I'm in my room, right, at home. I'm different when I'm home compared to when I'm at a networking event, right? I'm different from when I'm at a networking event than when I'm with my family, right? We're not the same. Same with when I'm with my family, I'm different compared to when I'm with friends. And then when I'm dating women, it's different than when I'm hanging out with friends. It's just a very different vibe, right? So that's just we naturally wear masks. We adapt to whatever situation that we're in, right? But the point is stress and inconvenience removes that masks, right? It removes what the person really is. So just keep that in mind. And then there's another one I wanted to talk about, and that's the no test, right? And what do I mean by the no test, right? So when you tell someone no, right? It almost tests how what their true intentions are, because when you tell someone no, how they react to your no is who they really are, right? And that's the thing. It reveals like their true intentions. It really does. If they remain the same and they respect their rejection, right? Even if they may be disappointed, they may be like, "Oh man, I wish you would have said yes." But they understand. They're like, "You know what? I get it. It's all right. You do you. I'll get someone else to do it or whatever it is, right?" That's a green flag. That's very good, right? That's something that's a very good trait in someone. But if they show agitation, right? They give you attitude. They show anger, right? It just shows that they have entitlement, right? And maybe you crush their ego. And honestly, if they're gonna react poorly to you saying no to them, right? What do you think they're telling you about themselves? Just think about that. So this type of person will be a headache, right? They'll bring unnecessary shit to your life, and you might even deal with potential betrayal in the future if you let it. And that's the thing. I always talk about controlling your emotions, and when other people can't control their emotions, that's not your problem. That's not really that's not a you problem. That's a them problem, right? So if this person like can't control their emotions, just keep them at a distance, right? And I say you don't have to cut off like completely. You don't have to cut people off completely. Like you don't have to cut off everyone that you meet, but keep them on your radar, right? Almost like a yellow card, right? I've heard this term before by one of the creators, but almost almost like a yellow card, right? Like how do they respond when you leave a boundary in place? If they respond poorly, then you take out a red card, and the red card means you're out of the game. You're out of the soccer pitch, right? And then so that's the thing. I talk about this because awareness is what protects you from this, right? And I bring this up because human nature, right? Very few people talk about human nature, and this is what led me to make videos like this, talk more about it because I want to get this. I want to get this through people's heads, right? And the thing is, yes, human nature is beneficial for if you're running a business. It's beneficial if you're dealing with people, and if you're a human being, you are dealing with people, regardless of what field you're in, right? You want to be able to understand human nature, because if you don't understand human nature, you're not gonna humans aren't logical. Humans are emotional, right? You could do everything right and you could still deal with bullshit, right? But if you understand human nature, you're going to accept it, and you're going to be able to avoid it because you're going to see the common pitfalls. And you're also not going to ignore your gut, because your gut is telling you the truth every time, right? And this is the type of video that I recommend you guys rewatch a few times, study it, take notes, right? And if you want to learn more, even better, what I recommend is you read two of Robert Greene's books, The 48 Laws of Power and The Laws of Human Nature, right? You want to read both of those books. And I know those books are they're very dense and not short reads. So if you're not a huge reader, I recommend you just get the concise edition of the books. Get the small ones. They're quick. You could finish them in a week if you really wanted to, or two. Give yourself 2 weeks if you're not a big reader, right? And the thing is, this information will not only save you, but it will allow you to hear the alarms, right? And without understanding human nature, you're deaf. And if you're deaf, you're not going to hear the alarm, right? So I'll leave it at there. Thank you guys so much. I hope you guys enjoyed. Subscribe and take care.